Today, we're going to have 5 speakers throughout the day, and they're going to be broken up with 15-minute breaks. After our keynote speaker, we'll break for lunches, where you can eat your lunches at your desk while we go through the next speaker, and then we'll have other 15-minute breaks with snacks and drinks throughout the day. Our first speaker will be Nikhil Deshpande, our director of the Georgia Gov Interactive Department, and he will be our keynote speaker for today.
Can you hear me? All right. Well, first of all, thank you for coming over. We're super excited, and wanted to share everything that we have been doing so far. So let's look at one question that me and my team we face quite often is, what's a Drupal? Or there are actually various ways of saying it, where people say Drupal or Drupal. So we just took this opportunity. It's like, it's Drupal. And we went through the same thing. So the main question is, and how does it affect your website? So before I can answer that, I just wanted to go back to January of 2011. And I wanted to share a certain situation that we were in. Yeah, we had some technological challenges back then. So, yeah, we were kind of in a mix there. We had a content management system, a CMS, which was split in 2 versions. The version 6 was quite a workhorse where, it worked, it walked, but it was extremely restricted. And version 7, any V7 customers here? Yes? I don't think I need to say anything. So yeah, it looked like a car, but wish it worked, right? So anyway, not to beat on me, last slide to do that. But we quickly realized, okay, this is not working. We need to move on to something that works for everyone. So we started looking at, hey, what's other people doing? And while we were looking for a CMS, we also noticed that there were so many new trends that had caught up in the industry, in the private sector, in other state governments, at the feds level. So we quickly started noticing that, okay, the rise of mobile devices is something, nobody can deny. I think there are more iPhones bought every day than there are babies born in the overall world entirely, literally, even today. And even more Android devices are activated. So, that's just undeniable. Also, there was a huge influx of modern browsers. And basically, all these browsers gave people an alternative to Internet Explorer and some of the restrictions that came with that. Essentially, everything was moving towards giving users a very rich experience. And it certainly became a challenge for agencies, for companies, for businesses to cater to those users, because now they have multiple options and the way they deliver content. So let's just look at our own backyard. Georgia.gov, just the enterprise website, we saw a 400% jump for mobile usage. We get about 1.2 million hits a month. And out of 5% of those hits constitute mobile users. So at this point, crunching numbers, that's essentially about 60,000 hits just from mobile and tablet devices. Most of them come from Android, and some of them are kind of spread across the iOS devices, the iPhones and the iPod touches and the iPads. And this is just for Georgia.gov. The most recent stats, this is for 2011. For January 2012, the number is 10%. So it's only going up. The modern browsers. Back when we installed Vinyl, we were dealing with 3 main browsers. Today, if we go to design, if we go to set up an environment, we are looking at these many. And they come across every platform. Say a desktop, laptop, tablets, phones, various phones like Android devices, Blackberries, the iOS devices. So essentially what they have done, they have changed the user expectations. These browsers are so fast. They render things on the fly. They do a lot of the stuff that otherwise native apps do real time. So we quickly realized, okay, that's something we had to cater to. The next thing that was changing was the screen sizes. We have analytics hooked on every website. So we know exactly who is coming to the website, what are they using, and what devices, what screen sizes, and we saw like a huge variety of screen sizes that the websites are being used. So that poses a new challenge. How do you cater to all those screen sizes? Now granted, back in 2007 when they launched the iPhone, you could see your website scaled down to the iPhone device, the screen right there, but it was diagonally scaled. And then we just adapted to kind of pinching in, pinching out, swapping up, down, and yeah, I mean it works. But what if you don't have to do that? How much of a user experience enhancement that would bring if you just design a site that fits here, 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 everywhere, depending on what they use, without having to have 6 different websites. So that was a new technology that was flooding the market. It's still catching up. I'm not saying it's widely used right now, but a lot of the sites are moving to this platform. Just one technical insert here is that technology is called responsive web design. And essentially what they do is a website otherwise designed to be viewed on a certain main desktop monitor, they scale it for maybe a tablet horizontal, a tablet vertical, a phone, and that is without having multiple versions of it. Okay. All right. So this is how they do it. This is just one website for a main monitor. You can go down on the size, it just resizes. It resets all the elements. That's for a tablet vertical, and that's how it shows up on the phone. And that's how they do it. Now surely, this just isn't something that comes out of the box. We have to work with whoever owns the site, owns the content, because the biggest challenge here is not just that the design is scaled, but the design has changed, also the content has changed. The business owners, they have to understand that, you know, if someone's using a certain device, what would they looking for the first thing? So maybe something that you serve on a mobile device might be a little different than what otherwise you would serve on a main monitor. So that brings up the next big challenge is for the content. The older systems were really kind of tuned, or they were set up for content managers or content creators to create content that would sit on a web page. That's just not that true anymore. Yeah, it would sit on a web page, but that's just like one of its destinations. Maybe there would be a tweet that goes out with that content heading. So suddenly, the header needs to be such that if someone is looking up for your particular piece of content or a particular topic, the headline needs to be relevant, because they won't have the rest of the context of the page to look at that content. So this is just isolated piece of content we're talking about. And once the content started flowing across pages, that brought a big challenge to how do you deliver it? How do you make content relevant? So no longer where we just created a headline, created an article, or stuck in a couple images, we also had to now assign some keywords to describe that content. also that content goes and sits in search engines. I mean, this is not news that the searching patterns are changing. People rely less and less on navigation, and they quickly just kind of go to search, look for what they're looking for. They don't want to spend trying to understand how you've architected the site. It's good to have it because there's some percentage who still does that, but most of them they don't. That's the whole Google versus Yahoo philosophy that Google has changed with a very powerful search. So our content needs to be clever enough to be able to go and reach those people. So really, kind of like if you build it, they will come. It's not that relevant anymore. You have to meet them where they are. So we saw this challenge. We were like, okay, we are going to need a CMS that's going to cater to all these things that we want to do. This is our wish list. So we looked at the market, what's out there, other than kind of just content management systems trying to get out of the basement where someone's just coding it. We looked at some major players, but there was still a lot out there. We asked some industry experts about, hey, what's a really good content management system? And everyone said, well, it really depends what you want. So we had our own filters for what do we want out of it. The first thing what we wanted was we wanted a content management system that was enterprise, a CMS that is enterprise. So we're just not looking for a CMS to power that one website. We have multiple websites, so we are looking essentially for a platform. So we looked at enterprise CMSs. But still, we saw a lot. We saw the one we want to get out of. Like, okay, wait a minute. Why is this coming up even if we shortlisted? Then we looked at the cost factor. What do we want to have as a floating factor, a balance between something that works for us and something that will not cost us a lot of money? So that narrowed down on these two. The next thing we were looking for to narrow this down was, what is the market reach? Because we don't want to be the only peg on the iceberg. We surely want someone who can share our problems, who have realized them before we do, or before we encounter them. So we were looking for a decent market share for enterprise systems. So when we brought that down, we had three main players: Drupal, Expression Engine, and Joomla. Looking at these three, we quickly noticed that, okay, one thing that struck out in one of these three options was there is this huge groundswell around the government sector, the public sector. One of these three had such a huge footprint at the federal level that, we didn't have to think twice before choosing one of these three, which normally is the hardest thing to do. And you narrow it down. So essentially, we chose Drupal. You're going to hear a lot of things about Drupal through the day, so I'm really going to keep it very high level. So Drupal is the second largest CMS worldwide. WordPress being the first one, but Drupal is the enterprise version of CMS, having a 2% footprint of the entire websites worldwide. That's a big number. The next thing that really attracted us was it was open source. Open source, could be free, or it could come with some cost, but nothing compared to what otherwise you would pay for a proprietary system. And the biggest winning factor was the worldwide community. There was a huge community. There is still. It's growing. It's multiplying as I speak. there are some, hundreds of thousands of user accounts for Drupal. And there are close to about 15,000 registered developer accounts for Drupal. So essentially what they do is they keep this product alive. They keep coding for it, they keep coding all these components, and they publish them so people can use them. If somebody sees a glitch, they can fix it, or they can contact the person who wrote it, and they can fix it. It's an ongoing effort to make it better. And having used a proprietary system so long, that was just such a huge breath of fresh air. There are people that are willing to help you. At this point, you want a photo gallery? Wait a minute, let me see how long it's going to take for us to code it. Going forward, you need a photo gallery, you got about these many options. And this is just the community. So we were very excited about it. It's like, okay, we want Drupal, how do we get it? So we put out request for proposal and made sure it reached everybody. And we got 3 responses back. And we were like, just 3? We at least knew there were like 10 major players out in the industry who could really do this easily. But when we opened those responses, they were actually partnered responses. So people had partnered with each other, and they were bidding as one response. So we were happy because everyone that we had wished would bid on this, they did. And we took a long time, like it was a very hard effort to go through the entire grading process, but we eventually selected Phase 2 technology hands down. I mean, they just really shine through that process. Their experience, and you're going to hear from Jeff Walpole from Phase 2 more about what they will do, but they really struck, and they come with 2 other partners as a team with them. Phase 2, they have their own CMS, which is fine-tuned for the government sector. It's called Open Public. They are partnered with Acquia, which is a Drupal host, and all they do is, and all hosting they do is just for Drupal. So their servers are tuned to serve Drupal the best way they can. They also partnered with a local company called MediaCurrent. They're up in Alpharetta, and they have been down here to work with us a lot of time. So have the Phase 2 people. So they are also a one-stop shop for Drupal. And with this entire team, we really started working on getting everything together, making sure all the vignettes sites from the V6 platform, from the V7 platform, they all get moved to Drupal. So, here we are today. And it really makes me happy. And I don't know if I'm like really expressing it as much as I'm trying to kind of look a little down and talk into this mic. But we are really excited to be moving to Drupal. And we will get there. We will get there. Absolutely. But I just wanted to say that even though it seems like we are starting right now, this has been a long journey already. And I just wanted to recognize my team. They have put through a lot of hours, a lot of effort, a lot of heartache to make sure we find this right tool for everyone. So, hey guys, can you just join me up here? I just wanted to. Also, one of the reasons I wanted you to join up here is one of these people are going to be coming and talking to you about your sites. Mark. Okay, Mark, come on up here.
They're also very modest.
Thank you so much. I know we are not done, we are just beginning, but It's been a long journey. I just wanted to thank you all. All right. I also wanted to thank you for contacting us whenever you had a problem with Vignette, giving us a chance to resolve it, and we will still be supporting you while you're on the old platform, the legacy platform, before we move you to Drupal. So stay put, it's going to change. The second part of the keynote, as I mentioned, Drupal is open source. And we have the Chief Technology Officer for the state of Georgia, my boss, Steve Nichols.
Let's see if I can get this mic to work. All right, can everyone hear me?
Or not so much?
Okay.
Oh. All right, how about now?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. I wanted to just kind of give you guys a little bit of a CTO's view. Gosh, that is a lot of reverb. A little bit of a CTO's view of, I'm going to just talk about this.
I think I can probably talk loud enough that you guys can hear me. Is that people in the back? Can you hear me okay? All right, much better than using a mic. I hate using a mic. So as sort of state CTO, but I also have responsibility for Georgia.gov, just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of insight into like how did we get to this decision. So we've been working, kind of behind the scenes for about a year on this, kind of, making this decision to go to Drupal, running an RFP. Just wanted to kind of give you an idea of like what are we trying to accomplish here, what problem do we think we're trying to solve, besides the obvious pain for those of you who are V7 webmasters. All right, next slide please. So first I just wanted to set a little bit of context about just how much the world has changed since we chose Vignette, right? So we put Vignette into production in July of 2002. So if you go all the way back to July 2002, the first iPad had just been introduced. There was no Facebook. Literally, Mark Zuckerberg was a senior in prep school in 2002, hadn't started Harvard yet. Twitter didn't exist. Gmail didn't exist. Firefox didn't exist, right? We're still using Netscape browsers. I mean, the world actually looked like a pretty stable place. Everyone's running, Internet Explorer. It seems like that won the browser wars. Everyone's running Windows. We knew the internet was going to be important, but we had no idea sort of how important. So this slide kind of, I think, really starts to show you just how much the world has started to change since 2007. So let me kind of just explain what the graph is. Basically, the idea is the vertical represents 100% of all the desktop operating systems out there. So, it's gonna always sort of add up. And so if you go all the way back to the 70s, you can see we kind of all started out with TRS-80s and like dial-up modems, right? There really wasn't an internet as we know it. It was basically happening in universities and Department of Defense. You might remember having an Atari or a Commodore if you're a kid like me, or for the rest of you that are a little younger, you might be going, what are you talking about? You can really see that around, so Windows 1.0 was released in 1985, but it didn't really get traction until 1990 with Windows 3. So from about 1990 on, you can really see that for most people, personal computing meant running Windows, some flavor of Windows on an Intel box. And then in the mid-90s, when we really started to use web browsers, for a while it meant Netscape and Internet Explorer. Then it pretty much just meant, Internet Explorer. And we were in a pretty stable place there, really until about 2007. At this point, the world is changing just so rapidly, it's hard to describe. So if you start to look at what's happened with Android and with Apple iOS and with the introduction of the iPad, at this point in 2011, there was about 355 million Intel sort of Wintel PCs shipped. there's about 360 million iOS, iPad, Android devices. So at this point, there's more smartphones and tablets shipping every year than there are PCs. So that's kind of what's going on with your users, right? Your users, they aren't stopping for you to stand up a mobile site or to tell them that you're now iPad compatible. What we're seeing is they're just showing up with these devices. You know, we can see it in the web traffic, and they're just expecting it to work. So, you know, when like my other group did open enrollment, they didn't test for iPad, but we can see from the traffic a bunch of state employees came through and renewed their benefits with iPad. So that's kind of just the reality that we're living in as far as, you know, we've got to get a lot more agile because the world is accelerating, right? The technology world is accelerating. So why open source? You know, everyone kind of goes into conversations about open source with a little bit of an opinion about what it is, but mostly people think of it as like, well, it's free, you're doing it for low cost. So before we talk about why, let me just talk a little bit about what open source is. So the free part, that's not really the important part about open source. The important part is who controls the intellectual property. With open source, the intellectual property isn't retained by one company, so it means a lot of people can work on it at one time in parallel tracks, and you can, you know, adopt things that are working and discard things that aren't. So what the Free Software Foundation says is don't think about it as free as in free beer, think about it as free as in free speech, because it's really about who controls the IP. So for us, when we started to look at a new content management system, we realized that 10 years ago, it was sort of a bunch of big, you know, NASDAQ-traded companies with proprietary content management systems. Now, if we weren't doing Drupal, we'd be doing another open source system because that's like the top 5. That's basically what's now dominating the space. The technology's changing so fast that the open source products are basically the only, you know, the only guys that can kind of keep up with the rate of change. So, you know, at this point, you know, you're kind of thinking about open source as a choice, you know, and I would say to you, it's not really a choice anymore. It's kind of pervasive. So every Android device is running on open source. The Mac operating system, while it's proprietary, it's built on open source products. Firefox browser is open source. Linux operating system is open source. Apache web servers, which pretty much power the internet, they're all open source. If you got a wireless router in your house, it's running Linux, embedded Linux in it. So open source is sort of all around us. It's really just, you know, it's just pervasive in everything that we're doing with IT now. So it's not really a choice anymore. So let me talk a little bit about Drupal and open source. So for some of you, this may be the first time that you're hearing about Drupal, but Drupal has really taken off in the last couple of years, and I think it's not a coincidence that it's because it's open source. So there's a huge community working on Drupal. There's about 4, it has a sort of an open architecture where you can add modules to do different things like deal with mobile devices or deal with maybe standing up an intranet or some tricky authentication, whatever it is. There's like 40,000 different modules that are you know, out there and available for Drupal. So what we've seen in the last 2 years is that it's really taken the federal government by storm. So all of the whitehouse.gov sites are running on Drupal now. All of the U.S. House of Representatives sites are running on Drupal now. The U.S. Department of Education is on Drupal. U.S. Department of Energy is on Drupal. U.S. Department of Commerce is on Drupal. Some of the civilian-facing websites, like non-warfighting websites for the DoD are on Drupal. Some of the NASA sites are on Drupal. You know, we've got just a few of the logos up here. It's really pretty amazing how much traction Drupal has gotten, you know, in the community. So really what I wanted to leave you with is just kind of this thought about the rate of change, because my message is we're picking Drupal because we know we got to get more agile because things are changing really fast, which means getting a product where we're kind of stepping out of the way, where you aren't waiting for us to, you know, do some lengthy upgrade to get a module so you can deal with whatever the latest technological change is, so we can sort of just make changes to the product immediately. So as I was kind of researching here, ready for this talk, I came across this quote, and I thought it was sort of appropriate because it reminds us how hard it is to predict the future. So this was actually Steve Ballmer in 2007 talking about the iPhone. And I just love this quote because, I mean, how could the guy be more wrong, right? 200 million iPhones have shipped since then. And he's saying, like, who in the world is going to buy this thing, right? $500 is the most expensive cell phone ever. Apple doesn't have a product. We'll see how they do, right? So now we look up, and it's 2012. The iPad didn't even exist 2 years ago, and there's already 55 million iPads that have shipped. And now we've all got to write websites that are going to deal with people who expect to be able to swipe, right, to navigate around the page. So really, with choosing Drupal, we're trying to choose flexibility and agility because we don't know what's coming next. I for sure don't know what's coming next. So that was just wanted to give you a little bit of insight there on what we were thinking and how we got to that decision. All right, I think so. I probably raced through that pretty quick. So if there's any questions. All right, no questions. I'm going to turn it back over to Nikhil.
Thanks, Steve. We have our GTA CIO, Calvin Rhodes, here with us. Calvin, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I probably need this. I don't have a super loud voice. But wanted to apologize for not being here when the meeting kicked off. We actually had another meeting going on at the same time, but wanted to simply come and say welcome. We truly appreciate your participation in this. This is really an exciting time, I think, for the state of Georgia, and there's so much that this is going to give us the ability today. I know you're a huge part of that, so I wanted to come and say thank you for your investment in this with the time today. And also just the hard work that's in front of not only the GTA team, and I appreciate everything that they've done to get us to this point, but you're a huge part of this effort going forward. And we're excited about what I think you're going to be able to achieve with these new tools that we have in front of us. And I just wanted to let you know that your efforts and your working in a collaborative manner with us and making sure that we're all headed towards meeting the business needs of your agencies. That's important to us to make sure that you look at us as truly a partner in trying to achieve this. I know that the team has a very aggressive schedule and trying to move through this quickly. And with the number of websites now that you're looking to do per week, I know that there's a lot of work and effort. We just really appreciate your part in this. I'm looking forward to, I think, the unveiling of what some of the new color palettes and some of the things that, with us working with the team over at Economic Development, that we've been able to achieve. So I hope you're as excited about this as we are, and just truly appreciate your involvement and participation with this. Thanks for the opportunity to say more.
Thank you, Calvin, Steve, and Nikhil. We are going to now break for lunch. There's boxes out in the hall with drinks and cups. Feel free to grab a cup of ice in the kitchen across the hall, and then feel free to bring them back to your chairs, and we'll probably start our next presentation about 15 to 20 minutes.